Hey guys, what is on? It is another episode of Millennial with Billy and Mel. What's going on, guys? And I am on a different location than I normally am. I'm at the beach, so I'm having a good time there. Mel's back in Pennsylvania, but it looks like Mel, you got a little bit of a tan going on. A little jealous.
I look like I'm at the beach too, guys. I got my spray tan from Brown's Bunny.
So what we're going to be talking about today is super important. It's something that you should do all the time, right? It's National Honesty Day. So we're gonna get honest with you guys today because we're gonna just let it all hang out today, basically. But we also have a very, very special episode because we have one of the original, the OG fans of the show today. He's going to be joining us. He's not only going to be talking about a little bit about what he does, because we do want to give him that opportunity, but he's here to yell with us about National Honesty Day, why it's important, and we're just going to get into it. So without further ado, my friends, we are going to introduce the man, the myth, the legend, Brandon Keath. Brandon, what is going on, man? How are you?
I am doing really well. It's a Friday and we made it.
It is.
And so, but Mel, I forgot to ask
hosting.
You, right? Like, I got so excited that Brandon was going to be on, that we're going to have a guest. How are you doing?
You forgot about me. You forgot. My week's been great. I know. I was just so excited you were here. I was posting a story for everyone. I here have my some display items. I've just been getting ready for Derby Day, my favorite day of the year, tomorrow. My little hat here. That's not the one I'm wearing. Obviously, I wore that one on the news, which did air finally on Wednesday. So we got that aired, but it was a pretty crazy week just getting everything done for that. But I'm excited to finally celebrate tomorrow and raise some money for the Bethesda mission.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So are you going to Derby Days is in conjunction with like horse racing, right? Is basically
Kentucky Derby.
Yeah. So are you going to be drinking some mint juleps tomorrow as well?
Mint juleps, wine, it'll all be flowing. We're doing a cork pop contest to see who can shake their champagne and pop the cork, and there's going to be games, and definitely it'll be a really great time. So I'm excited.
Awesome. So, but like I said, I do want to take just a couple minutes before we get into National Honesty Day and, understanding what that actually means to be honest, and a question that I'll ask. I got a pretty important question to ask before we kind of get into that. But Brandon, tell us a little bit. We know you, right? We see you on the show every week. We know who you are, but some of our viewers do not know who you are, what you do. So let the other millennialers out there know what you do.
Yes.
Sure. So my name is Brandon Keath. I mainly work in cybersecurity and business. I work at Appalachia Technologies as a cybersecurity officer, or VCISO. And a lot of my day is advising businesses on risk and how to align the business vision and strategy to have the most growth and the most profit while reducing risk.
Yeah. So funny story, when I first met Brandon, and Mel, I think I told you this, but funny story, because he's a cybersecurity guy, right? Mm-hmm. So how millennial of a job is that, first of all, right? Cybersecurity, okay? But the very first Zoom meeting we got on, Brandon started, he was looking off to the computer, and he was, we were getting to know each other, and he goes, "Hey, are you at this location? Are you here? Like, have you done this?" And like started naming all these things. And he said, "Yep, your information is everywhere." Right. So it was that's the kind of, it was just a really interesting conversation that first time, because it was just like, well, that makes sense. He's cybersecurity, and we always make that joke, he's not that guy that's sitting in a basement somewhere with a hoodie on, hacking into a bunch of stuff. Right.
Right. But it's good today, talking about being honest, that, hey, there's stuff on the internet that people can see and find, and hopefully that you're honest with those things as well. And, it's kind of a good topic to talk about, because there's definitely things that some people don't want to have on the internet.
Right. And if we're honest, there's really not privacy anymore.
Right.
Like there used to be before, because it was difficult to look you up in the white pages. But now it's not that difficult. If you can get someone's birth date, which people advertise it on Facebook free for anyone to see, and you got their name, it gets really easy to start tracking down who's who. And then once you have that information, you can do a lot of things with it. Send someone snail mail, do all kinds of terrible, unhonest things.
Oh, no.
Look at that. Look at that. Yeah. So I think we should start off by, I'm going to ask this question and I want to get your guys' thought on it, because I think there's two different answers to this question. And so, is honesty always the best policy? So I want to get your thoughts on that, because I think there's two ways you can answer that question.
Well, I'll share quickly and then let Brandon go. And I've struggled with this a little bit in my life and in my past. And we had been chatting a little bit before we hopped on here that some of the events and place that I'm at in my life, I've definitely been a lot more honest with myself and honest with other people. And I've struggled with, feeling like there's a way to say things in a nice way. It's not sugarcoating it, but I think that there's ways of saying things that you're not necessarily hurting someone's feelings. And then I think that there's ways that people who say, well, I'm just being honest, and it's their way of using things that aren't so nice. So I've struggled with that in different personalities and different people. So I would say in my past, no, because it was hurtful to people and me sometimes. But I got thicker skin, and I also realized that I think that some people just, it's how they express and it's internally sometimes with them. So as where I'm at now, I think I've definitely been able to be way more honest with myself and other people. And sometimes it's a little bit more extreme when you can really be that fully honest. I don't know if that makes sense, but.
No, totally.
No, I think that makes sense.
What do you think, Brandon?
I think that it all depends. Honesty generally is always the best policy, but at the same time, sometimes you can be honest and people don't even believe you if you're honest. And when you talk about being honest, sometimes it can be a bit of an information overload. So sometimes I think about how I can phrase things, and it may not be 100% honest, but it's going to be honest enough that it makes sense to the person I'm talking to, right? Like for example, I do a lot of things where things are technical and very in-depth, right? So I might compare cybersecurity to your home or breaking into your home or a door. Is that a direct equivalency? Am I negating some things and being a little dishonest in that conversation? Maybe a little bit, but I'm breaking things down to a point where it's easier to understand. And what I found is I have to do that with my feelings too, right? Because if I am 100% honest, my words can be taken the wrong way. Like you said, you have to be very careful with how you say things and construct things, or you might hurt someone's feelings. And that's not what any of us want either.
Yeah, totally. Like you said something, and both of you said this, and I kind of am on the fence, right? Because I think it all depends on the situation that you're in. It depends on the type of person that you're talking to. And so I am reading, and I've talked about this book before, and I'm almost finished it. And it has a lot to do with the colors, right? The colors of personality. And I think it's called Surrounded by Idiots. And I think it really depends on who you're talking to. Like if you're talking to a dominant person, right, being very blunt and very straight to the point can be what they need to hear. Right. But if you're talking to somebody that's more maybe emotionally driven, like you said, Brandon, maybe it's choosing our words a little bit differently so that they understand the message. Right. Because we're all saying something differently. We're saying the same thing, but we could be saying it differently. Right. And then another point you brought up that was really interesting is, some people aren't ready to hear that. Aren't ready for that information. And if you're not ready for it, it's just it's the old saying, in one ear and out the other.
Right. I just want to actually time out and preface go back for a second, because honesty is actually one of my biggest values. So I should not discount or downplay this when I say I don't know. When I did my value sheet for Leadership Harrisburg, similar to the color code test, we actually had to circle 10 of our top values, then 5, and it was like during ethics and values. And I circled 10, and then we had to go down to 5, and then we had to go down to 1. And my number 1 is honesty. So I absolutely want to make sure that everyone knows that, because I preach just being honest with everybody and with yourself. So I know we're going to get into that, but I do want to make that clear. But I think your point too, and where we're going is about some people aren't ready. And that's where some part of what I struggle with now too, is where I feel I am when you can be honest with yourself and you're trying to be honest with other people, there's a huge disconnect when they're not honest with themselves. And it's that I've had some difficulty lately with that.
Yeah. I mean, that, I think I want to get into that, right? Like there's 2 types of honesty that I want to talk about today. And I think it's important. And I think you have to do the first one first before you're honest with anybody else, right? You have to be honest with yourself, right? And so I think, all of us are, entrepreneurial type of people. And so I think we explore that more so than maybe somebody that works for, not to say that working for a 9-to-5 job, you're not an honest person, but I think you probably are more in tune with how you're thinking and stuff like that when you do stuff like what we do. So let's talk about that. Why is it important for you to be honest with yourself?
Well, Brandon, kick it off. We'll alternate here.
All right.
I'll share my time,
All right. So I think it's incredibly important to be honest with yourself because it's very easy to fall into a delusion, right? Like I talk to a lot of people where they blame their circumstances or blame their situation or their resources for not being able to achieve things. I mean, I had an atrocious GPA in high school, below 2.0. I flunked out my first year of college, and I got into a very bad rut in my late teens, early 20s, where I had a lot of people telling me, you're not going to be able to do anything, you're not going to be able to succeed. And if I had listened to that and not been honest with myself and said, hey, if I tried again, if I really tried and sat down and did this for real, could I do it? And the honest answer was, I think I could. And I went back and I'm finishing my 2nd master's degree now.
Wow,
and I've been
good for you.
Working in my field for over 12 years now. So it's amazing that sometimes if we're not honest with ourselves, if we're like, what do we want? What is it we want out of life? Because we only get one that we know of. It's easy to fall into this delusion that, there's someone else to blame or there's something else to blame. And while a lot of times there are circumstances, even in business, right? Where do we want to go with our business, right? We need to be honest about our growth and our expectations and the things we're doing, but we also need to be honest with the time and effort we're putting in, right? I think that's why it's so important to just be honest with ourselves.
Yeah, I like it. Because at some point you have to be you just have in order to be somewhere different than now. If you like where you're at, then keep doing what you're doing. But I think I think most people though in their lives want something better, right? I think that I would say that's a universal truth that most people want. The majority of people.
Honestly, I don't. Honestly,
be honest.
Honestly, I don't know. It's the majority of people. I think it's the minority of people. Honestly,
I agree with Mel on that one. A lot of people I speak to, like I've had friends that I graduated from high school with, and I just asked them, "Don't you have ambition to do something more?" And they said, "No, nope. I'm gonna work this job I have. I'm gonna stay at this for the rest of my life, and that's all I want to do." And it's like, as long as that's what makes you happy, if that's what you want to do, I have nothing against that. But for some of us, instead of most of us, some of us have more ambition than that. We want more things out of life. And I think it hurts us because sometimes we're in this entrepreneurial mindset and it's hard for us to understand that concept. Like, how can you be content with where you are? Why don't you want to better
Absolutely.
yourself?
Well, I mean, honestly disagree with both of you because I would think if we're being honest, most people aren't honest with themselves. So they might be under the delusion that they don't want something better, but maybe they
So they don't know?
They haven't come to
Okay.
terms with that they want a better life, right?
Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah.
And a better life might not be monetarily wise. It might not be position wise. But there might be things that they enjoy that they wish they had more of. Maybe it's more time to do things. Maybe it's go on vacations. Maybe it's to live in a different place. I don't know what their wants and needs are, but I think at the end of the day, most people aren't honest with themselves, so that they put on this facade that they're okay. Like they're like, oh, I'm good where I'm at, right? Even though like they're not honest with themselves. Like, well, I wish I had this, but I don't know how to get there. I don't know how to do it. So instead of getting into that pain and discomfort of being honest with yourself, they just revert to the easy. That's the status quo.
I started thinking that when Brandon was talking and when we were, I do feel that sentiment, but I was actually thinking that too, because I think that it's not that they don't want to. I think maybe they don't know how, and they don't have enough of that. I don't want to say ability, but to be that self-aware and want the change bad enough to where they take the action. Yeah. So maybe that's the whole thing. Is you're right. Maybe it's there. It's just that we're not seeing enough action, so we think that they don't, and maybe that's the wrong thing. Because they do, or I think that there's a lot that sometimes we, or personally, want more for other people more than they're showing, and it looks like they don't want it for themselves. But you're right, maybe they just they're not being honest with themselves, and then when they do, they get there. Because I think Brandon, you shared the story. Likewise, I was the whole joke of fake it till you make it, but I felt like when I was going through my divorce and a little bit right after, people would say, how are you doing? How's your business? Oh, it's good. It's good. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah. I lost my retail shop. Okay. I didn't have a physical space anymore. It's not good. I just was faking it. And I was telling everybody, and I was lying to them, and I was lying to myself. And it took a while until I, ended up getting extra income at the time and needing, to really make some major decisions in my life. But when I started doing that and just making little baby steps, and like you were saying, like feats of success we were talking about earlier, it actually helped me so much to be more honest with myself when I was honest with other people. And on the outside, I wasn't faking it anymore. And that's what I think a lot of people do. And I've been there, so I get it. I started saying, it's not so good. It's really slow. Yeah, but it's okay. It's slow. It's okay. I'm taking a new direction. I'm evaluating things. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. But once I started with little tiny aspects saying, it's not so good, I was able to then take more and more and more until where I finally was honest that, man, shit sucks. No, this sucks. This is really bad. And I need to get my shit together. And then I started really being honest and saying, I need to do this and I need to do that. And then it was just, from there. But I was there too for a while. And that's one of the things that I promised myself, that I would be, honest with myself so that I can be honest with other people.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think you guys have brought up two important things, or one important thing, being honest with what's holding you back. I think that was a big issue for me, for a really long time. Like when my parents got divorced, right, I was really young. I was like probably like 11 or something like that. So I was like in those really formative years. And I kind of grew that outer shell that was kind of like, hey, like I would always be like, everything's fine, right? Like even though like there's that picture of that dog that's sitting in the room, everything's burning around them, right? and he's like, hey, this is fine, everything's good, right? And that was holding me back because I wasn't allowing myself to grow. I was just like, well, it's a bad situation, I just won't move past it, right? That's a roadblock, I'll just turn the other direction, right? And so like when I started to get honest with myself, like, hey, that event did affect me and it's not my fault, but I need to address this, right? I need to move past this in order to get to the next destination, was huge. And I think being honest with yourself is not fun. It's not easy. It's uncomfortable, but how do you grow if you don't get uncomfortable?
Right. And that brings up a really good point, is what I've seen with a lot of people, the times when you kind of have your own intervention, you become honest with yourself and what you want out of life, is when you hit rock bottom and you got no other place to go. For me, I had the most success when I was similar Mel situation after my divorce. I was living on my own. I refused to move back in with my parents, but I didn't know how I was going to pay rent. And that was when my career took off, because I was forced to find a better job. I was forced to improve my skill set. And sometimes we get so comfortable in where we're at and so scared of change that until there's a force, or we just have so much stress on us that it forces us to change, you won't.
Right. Or you'll get into the same situation again and again. Yep.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I just wrote down, real transformation happens from pressure situations, right? Like you think of anything that you think of like a diamond, for instance, right? I know that's like such a cliche kind of, example, but it is relevant, right? The diamond just just doesn't become a diamond. It's after years and years of pressure, right? In certain situation for that to become a diamond. And so, like Brandon said, like, for a lot of people, it takes that moment of like, my back's against the wall, right? I'm backed into a corner and I only have one direction and it's forward. I don't think mine was like where I was backed up against the wall, but I knew I guess it was because I was in a career that I hated. I was, in a job that, I would literally go to work and cry because I was just so like, and it just started to compound and compound and compound. And I thought I could separate work and life, right? And it didn't end up happening. And it was just like, I felt like I was an imposter. And finally, I was honest with myself, and my wife helped me, really ask some really difficult questions. And then, but once I was honest with myself, it was such like a liberating moment, right? It was so freeing. It was like, wait, there's another option. There's another thing I can do. And it was probably the same way that Brandon felt when he was just like, hey, like I'm good at this. This is going to be a way for me to, pay my rent and further my life. So I think, like I said, real transformation comes from pressure.
Yeah. And I think it's obviously I think it's all fear at the same time, but I think because we're not sure what's after that. And they say my Will Smith video, and he jumps out the plane about the greatest things in life are on the other side of your fear. But I think that we think it's going to be so much worse than it is, but I think it's the work. I mean, I think in the similar situations, it seems like you were in a similar spot, but I think that there's people who aren't that they're enough, where they don't have that force. It's harder to do it on your own and make the decision when you're just holding on with that little tiny bit of I don't want to say comfort or complacency or cushion of something, whether it's a relationship or finances. And, if somebody else is supporting you, you don't want to leave because you don't know. So you stay because of that comfort, it's that comfort there. But when you don't have that, that's when you, like you said, you're forced to do it. But I think that you make a good point that a lot of people aren't there enough, but I think you have to have it in you, or you have to have somebody there that's helping you, and not enough people have that, maybe.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you want to live life to the fullest, I think honesty is definitely a part of that equation, right? Because if you're wanting to live the best life for yourself, like I was thinking about it while you were just talking. I was thinking about, I read this book. I can't remember his name. David Goggins. You Can't Hurt Me. And so if you haven't read that book, it's an amazing book. It's a little crass. It's got a lot of cursing in it. He's a Navy SEAL, so you can pretty much figure out what kind of language he uses. But he used this, like, his story is amazing. He was like, down on his luck. He was 300 pounds. Like he was divorced twice at this point, and he came up with this technique, and it was called the mirror exercise. And it's something that I do. I try to do it every morning, and literally in the morning, like when you go to brush your teeth or something like that, you literally have a conversation with yourself in the mirror. So it's almost like and you're looking yourself in the eyes, like being and trying to be as honest as you can with yourself. And, he would call himself out. Like if he was doing something stupid, he's like, hey, I'm trying to become a Navy SEAL. I can't be eating cheeseburgers every day of the week, right? Like I need to lose this weight or whatever. And so like asking yourself the toughest questions, I think, is a really interesting exercise. If you haven't done it before, it's a little awkward, but like when you get to do it a couple more times, it is an eye-opening exercise.
Yeah, and I think what you said too about asking the hard questions, that's where a lot of the honesty comes into play. I think it's with anything. It's with yourself, with family, relationships, customers, clients, work. That's how the truth comes out. Really, is the hard questions. And you're right. I think if you can start doing that in the mirror, even with certain things, then it starts to become a habit. And I think that being honest and with yourself and other people is absolutely something that you can learn to do and get better at. And it's more of a habit, I think, once you start doing it. But that's pretty interesting, because I don't necessarily do it in the mirror, but I know I do talk to myself and say stuff like that. But yeah, I think those being a part of those hard questions are really bringing out the truth, for sure.
Yeah, I think self-actualization and just sitting down and reflecting. I remember a couple days ago, I just sat down and kind of looked back at my past accomplishments.
Ooh, yeah.
And felt proud about that, because I think that's a good thing to do. And then think about where you are, how you got here, where you are, and where do you want to go. And that's essentially, whether it's a business or whether it's for your own personal growth and development, that's what you have to do. If you say to yourself, hey, I want to be a millionaire in 10 years, well, anyone can say that. But where are you at, and how are you going to get there?
Yeah, I think being honest with your skill set too,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah. Like being honest with the skill. I mean, I'm a firm believer, with enough time and enough energy, you can learn most any skill, right? Like I'm never going to learn. I could put all the time and the energy into being a basketball player, but I'm only 5'6", so I'm never going to be in the NBA. I understand that, but I could probably be a pretty good, shot and stuff like that. I can learn that skill set. And so, but being honest, where, like you said, if you're that person that says, I want to have $10 million in the bank in 10 years, right? It is saying what are those steps, but also being honest with yourself. Like, am I the person I need to be in order to get that goal, right? Because you can see the action steps. You can say, hey, I need to save this much money, this, for this length of time in order to have that, or I need to do these types of jobs, right? I think it's important to be honest with yourself and know that you might be lacking in areas that you need to be stronger in.
Right. And if not, how do you get there? Right.
Right.
Because if you can't answer that question, that's a problem. You got to figure that out.
Right. And I just think too, I mean, it's hard work. I mean, it's like, it's not easy. I mean, I just remember, and again, and we, can see people in situations in our lives right now that we were going in 5 years ago. And it seems so easy to say, to do things, and it's so much easier to give advice and all those things that we've talked about when it was, you've gone through it and you realize how hard it is to make those changes. But I think it is a matter of getting to the point where you want to make a change in your life and change your world in a sense. And the actions that you're going to have to take, obviously, which are also, being honest, it's really it's the commitment and dedication in a sense to just wanting to make that change. And the people who don't change, there's a clear connection, I feel like, with people who aren't changing and are just talking and making excuses, like you said, and it's just not being honest, because it's just going to continue down the same path. I did it, in a sense. I mean, over and over until you finally get to the point where you're like, I'm fed up and I'm making a change. And that's where you just need to be honest with where you're really at.
Right. And change is hard. And the work, especially whether it's you're starting your own business or you're changing careers or whatever you might do in your life, it's not easy. It's hard work. It's going to be very uncomfortable. But we all know that it tends to be worth it. If you're willing to put the time and the effort and you have a good plan in place, it tends to be worth it. That doesn't mean you'll have to tweak your plan every now and then, right? Things don't go like we planned. Well, my sales are down 30% from what I thought. But what I've seen a lot of people do, and even businesses, is they have a plan. And maybe they did something like, we're going to do Google AdSense on this product we're selling. And they do it once. And then like, well, we're never doing Google AdSense again because that didn't work. So why didn't the plan work? Is it because we weren't targeting right? Is it because there's something wrong with the product? It's not alluring enough to buy to the customer. But because that one thing didn't work the one time, we're going to abandon the plan. Mm-hmm. And I think too many people, they have a dream and they start making plans toward their dream and one thing doesn't go right. And then they abandon the whole plan. Well, I tried, never again. And that's not how life works. You have to adapt and evolve to your circumstances and your changes.
Yeah. It's like going to the gym, right? It's like funny. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing wrong with the gym, right? The gym works
Mm-hmm.
perfectly for people that put the time and effort into it, right? But it's the person that goes in there, right, lifts one weight and then walks out and says, well, I don't have six-pack abs. I guess it doesn't work, right? Like it didn't work for me. So it's not going to, I just got to quit, right? And I love that kind of thought process. It's just like, yeah, change takes time. Everything, and going back to like social media and stuff like that, I think a lot of people get, comparatism, and we've talked about that before. They see somebody that maybe did a little bit, right, and changed their life drastically, but they were a lot further along probably than you were, right? They might have been, if they needed to be, I talk about this a lot, like if you need to be a level 10 to be the most successful cybersecurity person, right? Let's just say you need to be a 10 and you're at a 2, right? It's going to take you a little bit longer to get to a 10, but if somebody that's in front of you might be at a 6, right? And they need to do a couple of things to get to that 10, but it looks like they're a lot more successful than you. They didn't have to try as hard. And that's not the case. They probably had to do a lot of work to get from a 1 to a 6, right? So, but it's like building something, right? You don't just build a house. You don't put one piece of wood up and say, hey, I have my house, right? There's a lot more that you have to add to it to become a house.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was just thinking too, when you were saying about a lot of sometimes where we've gone through things in our lives that have on the other side made us have to be more honest with ourselves in order to make those changes. I think that there's been times where people weren't honest with us and we've been burned many times, and we've also not wanted that anymore. We don't want to do that to other people, and we don't want to do that to ourselves. And I think it starts to build that honesty to ourselves, that we're not going to allow other people. It starts with the boundaries. We're being honest with what we want and what we don't want. And then we can be honest with people then up front and say, hey, not going to do this, not going to allow this, because you are being honest that. So there's different sides of it, I think, too, where we've been affected in a sense from dishonesty. And meanwhile, there is a documentary called Dishonesty, and it's fascinating how the brain muscle works when you continuously are honest and then you're not dishonest. You guys would both love it. And it starts to show how your body reacts to being dishonest. It's kind of sick. It's kind of, I don't want to give it all away, but that's a good thing for people to watch about being honest or not. But I think on the whole other topic, which I don't know if Billy, if you, most people don't know that Billy usually steers I wouldn't say usually, he always steers the podcast here with these topics, because, me, I could just talk for days. But one of the things is more about being honest, in relationships, and and not being honest, and it's even friendships. I mean, I've seen situations where people are in not the best places and they're not being honest with other people because they're not being honest with themselves. It trickles out to friends and loved ones and lies and stuff, because it's just all a big mess of not being honest.
Right.
Yeah. So that's a kind of great segue. And Mel, you can steer the show wherever you would like. That's my mindset, right? Like
I need you because my shiny objects that, I'm the yellow. I mean, we're both yellows, but I got more.
Being honest, Mel.
I got more, I could go this way. I could go this way. I am honest. I would like to say that I used to be made fun of because of how much I talk. And I used to be loud. I mean, I'm Italian, but for some reason, I actually started lowering my voice. This is really weird. And it's not necessary to change who I am, but I started slowing down also, just I think in general, and listening to people. And but I had, my own significant other and my best friends at the time would make fun of me and put me down for talking a lot. And I think I'm the same way now, but I haven't had anybody really make fun of me, but I make fun of myself in a sense, saying, hell, I talk a lot and this, but that's a good instance of being what's too honest or offensive.
But I think that's you being honest with yourself, right? Like that's you saying, hey, I know this about me and it's part of my personality, and screw what everybody else thinks, right? That's who I am as a person. And if you can't get behind that, then we don't need to be friends. That's how, honestly, that's what I think. Like, if you can't take me for who I am, then we don't need to be friends, right? Or just like in a relationship, like, especially when you get married, like I take Megan for everything, right? I took because it is a contract, right? You sign that wedding contract.
It's a business.
I said, I was like, listen, I have flaws, you have flaws, like, but that's who we are as a person. That's what made us people. And it makes life interesting.
Well, and I think maybe it doesn't offend me much anymore because I am honest with myself. Maybe back then it was something that I didn't like, or I thought it was too much, or because I was made fun of, I suppressed it. But as I got older, and the divorce and the being honest with myself, I have been able to be who I want to be, and I don't have any regrets. And it's more of like the extreme of like, yeah, F it. Like this is who I am, not really, but I don't look at it as you're right. I've almost embraced it and say, hey, I've got a lot to say. I have a lot.
And they say you are, I forget what the quote was, but you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? And so
Yeah.
if you have negative people in your life who are just detractors from your goals, sometimes you just have to cut out negative and toxic people from your life and say, hey, if you're not going to be supportive, I'm okay with constructive criticism. But if you're just going to be mean and negative, I don't know if we can be friends, because those aren't the goals and values that I have. And if I'm being honest with you, maybe you have some insecurities that you're pushing off into me. Maybe I'm doing things that you want to do or wish you could do, but you're not being honest with yourself.
Mm.
Brandon, I had this conversation this week, for a story for another day, but I agree with that. That absolutely. Why is it that somebody is, doing those things and being that way? It's not the whole truth.
It's not a zero-sum game, and we have to stop looking like we're competing against everyone, and that if someone's doing worse than us and we're doing better, that makes me feel better about myself. We need to look at things like, how can we lift each other up and work together to serve one another in the best ways? Because when people we know and we all succeed together, that's a good thing.
What about the people, and I agree with you 100%. What about the people who are there, you want to help, that aren't being honest with themselves, but you're trying to be honest with yourself, and there's that, like we said, there's that disconnect.
Right.
How do you reach them? That's I struggle with that, is when I feel I'm being honest with myself and honest with somebody, and they're not being honest with themselves. And it is maybe a situation that you can't walk away from, or you care enough that you want to have that conversation. That's really difficult.
It is. I've had family members like that. I have family members I don't associate with because of that. It's really tough when you have a relationship with someone and you care a lot about that person, and you know that they're being a negative detractor in your life. You know that they're hurting you. They're hurting your productivity. They're hurting your feelings. But you care about them. You have feelings for them, whether a family member, friend, whatever it is, and they continue to be negative. And you want to hold on to that relationship because you do legitimately care about them and you want what's best for them. But we have to put ourselves in their shoes and realize that they're either not willing or not able to understand or conceive that, comprehend that. And some people just don't want to change. Or as Billy said earlier, some people aren't ready to be honest with themselves. And it's tough to say what's a trigger to make people change. I think, as we said before, people really only change when they have to, when they're under a tremendous amount of stress or pressure. And that's one of the difficulties of navigating life. It's not easy, and relationships are hard.
Yeah. I mean, I think, there's I was reading a book, and the guy said that there's 2 types of people in this world. There's carrot people and there's stick people. And so what he meant by that is that, if you have a carrot in front of you, you're always going after that reward. But the majority of people are stick people. They're going to run away from pain, right? Something's tough, right? If something's uncomfortable, right, they're going to run away from that. And so, but sometimes you have that magic moment where instead of running away, right, you run through it, because you're in that pressure, and it's like anything, you want to release that pressure. And so there's really, a couple ways you do that. You either by running away, which doesn't solve anything. It just sweeps it under the rug. Or you can be the person that decides, I'm going to be honest. I don't want this for my life anymore. I want to be different. And you push through that. And that's where like really explosive growth happens. Just like you, Brandon, like you had a really bad situation that you were dealing with. And instead of just going even further down, right, you decided, no, I'm going to use this as a springboard for the fuel for the next phase or the next chapter of my life. And so when you see people do that, it's really cool. But obviously, like I said, I wish we would see more people do that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you can't force someone to do something they don't want to do.
You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink.
You just can't. No matter how much you want to.
It's hard.
Sometimes you can't persuade someone. There's only 3 ways to persuade someone. You can persuade them with logic. You can persuade them with authority, like a police officer or judge, someone in authority, or you can persuade them with emotion. If none of those things work, it's at that point up to that person whether they change their mind.
I said that last podcast. Sorry, Brandon, but there was a few things that I kept going. I was like, peace.
Yeah, it was the end. It was you were talking about.
Got it.
Last week we were talking about toxic people.
Walking away, and it's this it definitely ties in with that topic. Interestingly enough, that some people who aren't honest with themselves, or you are toxic, the negativity, like Brandon said. But I just think it's difficult to make that decision to walk away or remove yourself from a situation, especially when it is. But we've done it in hard situations with jobs and relationships. It's harder with family, obviously, but I think that ultimately what I'm hearing and what I think I need to do more of is being honest with myself in how it's affecting me, and and what I need to do, or what we need to do for ourselves. We need to be more honest with it, the reality of the situation. It's not certain things aren't going to ever change, and we can't, like you said, we can't make somebody want something that they don't want. And I think for the most part, that's usually what it is, in a sense, that is somewhat of that disconnect. But it's, I think, being more honest with yourself of the situation and telling yourself, just like Billy says in the mirror, telling yourself that about yourself, telling yourself that about the situation or the other person, is just going to continuously being honest. It's not, oh, they're going to change, or, oh, I can help them, I can save them. All these women think they can change men and all these things that they can't, and it's not just women and men, but, in situations where I think being more honest with yourself about those things is going to help you move on sooner, make decisions, leave things that aren't good, is more not ignoring those things and being honest about them too.
Absolutely.
Well, you can't change anybody that doesn't want to change themselves, right? And so, but I do want to. You can. You can. If you build it, they will come.
Be broken before they can be rebuilt. That's why rock bottom, right?
Yeah.
It's hard in situations where what can get worse, or what's not, it's broken. Why can't they see sometimes what that it is bad? Why does it have to get so bad? But like I said, I've been there too. I mean, I think it's harder on the side of when you're in that, when you have that perspective, certain people can't understand our perspective, and then vice versa if you haven't gone through it.
I think honesty also does come down to communication is a big thing. And one thing I wanted to mention was just like one thing that really helped, take Megan and I's relationship to the next level, and we've been doing it for a long time now, is instead of just like holding that stuff in and not being honest with each other, right? And just saying, oh, well, yeah, I'm upset, but I'm not going to tell you why I'm upset. Like we now verbalize that. Like you say, I'm upset because this, right? Or I perceived what you said to mean this. And then we talk about it. Then we work through that. But you can't work through those things if both parties or multiple parties are not, even in a work setting, right? You're not willing to be honest with that other person. How can you expect anything to get different, be a different situation, have a different outcome, right? Because you're just going to repeat history, right? You don't learn from history. You're just doomed to repeat it. So that's one thing that I think I want to do more of, especially like in a friends setting or a business setting, is being honest and knowing when to say no to other people, to tell people how I'm feeling, to let them know like, hey, you can't just call me at any random time of the, evening. Like, we talked about that the other day, Mel, like, setting those boundaries. I think that's about being honest.
Being honest.
It's setting those boundaries for your life.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think I've been in a couple of situations where I am so focused right now on my business and myself that I have very little free time that I want to really spend with anybody that much at all. I mean, I want to focus on myself. And I've been in some situations where I've had to, hey, I'm focusing on myself. How do you, do you say I'm not interested in you? I'm not interested. I mean, I'm really just, I don't want to make the time. I know it sounds bad and I don't want to come off like an asshole, but I feel like I don't want to make the time. And that's a difficult situation. And it's just a bad example, but it's, grab coffee or catch up or have a convo or grab dinner. And it's like, I'm sorry, I'm not interested in doing it. It's just with everybody. I'm not really, it's not with, but because I have this little time that I have, I want to spend it with the people who really build me up. And I just don't have that interest, but it's hard to be honest when sometimes it's not going to come off very well. I don't know how to say things sometimes like that.
Yeah, definitely. So I know we could talk a ton about this topic. We would love to definitely have Brandon on again, but we definitely want to get to the two parts of the show before we jump off. So we have the millennial meme of the week for the Honesty podcast. So Mel, it is your turn. I believe I was last week. So
millennial meme.
What do you got for us as far as the meme?
Oh, I got a great one. So I'm going to pop her up here and I'm going to say that I think I'm going to give Brandon my Mel's moment. I think I'm going to give him Brandon's moment today.
Brandon's moment.
You might as well just know it now and give it to him. I'll share with you, buddy. All right, I'm going. All right. It says, I asked my wife what she would do when I die. She said, collect my life insurance and introduce her boyfriend. At least she was honest. And it's the guy, you've used this meme before. It's the old guy with the white hair with the smile. And look, she said, I'm going to collect your life insurance and I'm going to start introducing my boyfriend to everybody. And he was like, well, at least you're honest.
That's perfect. I love it.
That's a good one. And probably too true for some of us.
If we're being honest. But anyways, let's let Brandon have, I'll pop up the thing anyways, even though it's not Mel's moment. It's going to be Brandon's moment. So
yes.
Brandon, just give us maybe one last piece of advice before we sign off here today, and just so that people can take into the weekend and maybe better their lives. So take it away, Brandon.
Always make sure to be honest with yourself, what you want out of life and what you want out of others. Lower your expectations of others if you want to be happier in life. and just be honest about what you're going to get.
It's true. It's hard. That's hard, Brandon. It's very hard.
But you will be so much happier when you expect someone to make your sandwich wrong and they make it right. It is such an amazing feeling.
It's true.
You just expect the opposite, and then when they do it right, it's like, this is amazing. And then when they make it wrong, you're like, well, I expected this.
I'm gonna struggle with that one, but I will try. I will.
Well, I'll try that today. I'm going to play golf today, so I fully expect myself to play really bad, and so when I play decent, it'll be a good day. So
that's exactly what you got to do. If you expect that you're going to lose and all you do is win, you're happy all the time.
That's twisted, but okay.
I love it. So, but anyways, Brandon,
hacking your mind, right? No one said hack computers, right?
Hacking your mind.
Love it. So, but Brandon, we appreciate you jumping on today and being honest with us, as today is National Honesty Day. So we really do appreciate your time and having you on the other side instead of in the comment section. We had you on this side, so we really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I honestly enjoyed it.
Honestly,
I can't wait to be back. So
we'll definitely have you back. So, but anyways, guys, make sure you check us out every Friday, 12 o'clock. For another episode of Millennial. But we really appreciate everybody that jumped on, liked it. Make sure you set your notifications for us. But like I said, always tell you guys, make sure you have some good memories. Make some good memories with your family this weekend, and we will be talking to you real soon. So guys, have a good one.
Bye. Have a fun derby.